Hey everybody, welcome to the Addiction Unlimited podcast, where you get to learn everything you want to know about addiction and recovery. I'm your host, Angela-Pugh, co-founder of Kansas City Recovery, life coach, and recovering alcoholic. To learn more about me, you can listen to episode 0 on your podcast app or find us on the web at addictionunlimited.com. Hey everybody, welcome to the Addiction Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, Angela-Pugh. Thank you for spending time with me today and listening to the pod. I am recording in Orange County, which I think everybody knows is one of the most beautiful places in our country for sure. And I have with me Lance Smith from Evolve Breathwork. And this is a topic that is really fascinating to me. Breathwork is really big, especially in California. And I just want to learn more about that and how it relates to recovery and how it relates to our healing. So let's take a second and welcome Lance to the show. Hi, Lance. How are you?
Hi, Angela. I've never had it so good. It's an honor to be here.
I love that. Thank you for doing the podcast with me. This is awesome.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So for the listeners, really quickly, Lance and I have a mutual friend in Kansas City, and that's how we connected. So it's really cool, even for us to get to meet too in real life and connect as well. So tell everybody a little bit about you and what you do and what is breathwork.
Oh, wow. How much time do we have?
Plenty.
I love speaking on my favorite subject, which is myself. I'm a good AA.
So you'll
alcoholic.
fit right in.
Yeah. We can go on this one. So a little bit about myself. Essentially, I'm a mama's boy with daddy issues. I grew up in Northern California, small town. Placerville, California, where they discovered gold.
Where is that?
That's in the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas, just west of Lake Tahoe, South Lake Tahoe.
Okay.
Yeah, beautiful place.
So, Tahoe's for sure beautiful.
Oh, yeah. I love Lake Tahoe. I love the Sierras. I have a strong connection with the outdoors and nature.
Yeah.
So, I wouldn't say it was the most typical upbringing, a lot of dysfunction, things like that. We grew up very poor, and my parents did what they had to survive, even cultivating cannabis. So early on in my life, we had a lot of secrets in the house, and that directly relates to alcoholism and addiction.
Oh, it's such an interesting connection. I love too how you say cultivate cannabis instead of like growing pot or something.
They grew weed, man.
Yeah. It was so very professional. Thank you.
I strive to do my best, right? My father struggles with addiction as well. He is sober now, which that is another story on its own, but it is an amazing one that I did not see coming. I have an amazing relationship with him.
Wait,
today.
Did you get sober first or did he?
He did, but he still was not part of my life at that time.
Oh, okay.
So we were on separate paths, and we came together at a part when I'd been sober for a time, but had gone back out. And that's when he came back in my life, and he was sober and I wasn't. And
right. So
yeah, interesting dynamic.
For sure.
They always are, right? Right. We all have a story. This little bit I do want to add in, can be a little difficult for me to talk about, and I love my dad very much. And I knew that he did the best he could at the time, but in his addiction, there was a fair amount of abuse in all forms when I was young. I lived with him. My mom left him, and I wanted to be with my dad. I'm the oldest, and I looked up to him, and it got gnarly. I lost trust at a very young age.
Sure. From
the people that I trusted most. Abandonment issues. I know I'm very special and that no other alcoholics out there have any of this.
I love
very unique.
I love that you kind of explained it though, because a lot of people don't understand what abandonment issues are or where it comes from. Right. I think people think abandonment, they think of someone leaving, and that's really not what it is. It's really about sort of a primary caretaker, if you can't trust your primary caretaker to care for you, is abandonment. So it's not necessarily somebody physically leaving. They can physically be there and you can still have abandonment. So
Sure, absolutely. And, a lot of trauma came with that. And this is something I explained to my clients, exactly what you said. Your parents may have been there, loving, caring, physically been there, but they may have been simply just engulfed in work.
Right.
And we can get trauma from that. Abandonment issues, trust issues, when on the surface, everything was, seemingly perfect.
Yeah, as it should be.
So those are like key points that I like to share. I think that kind of set me on the path. Did that make me an alcoholic or an addict? I don't know. I don't really spend that much time thinking about it.
Right.
Like, it just is what it is now. And those are things that have the underlying causes of addiction.
Right.
Right. So
it all plays a role.
It plays a role.
But
Absolutely.
I think too, like I love that you pointed out that there were a lot of secrets, because that is such a huge piece that people don't necessarily recognize. And something in my own sobriety that I've started to kind of put together in the last couple of years too, like we had secrets and nothing horrible,
Right.
but like we didn't live in the right school district for me to go to the good school.
Yes.
So we lied about our address so I could go to the good school, and it
Totally,
just created
totally.
this whole weird thing where I couldn't just be honest about who I was and where I lived. And I couldn't have people over to my house because we didn't want the district to find out. And, it was this whole weird thing. So I love that you recognized that was a big piece and pointing it out as well.
Yeah. And, with that, and I think it's not limited to just a select few people. We all want to feel connected and have a sense of community. Interesting statistic. I met a man a few years back, a PhD, that had just done a study on addiction. He was able to figure out the number one cause of addiction. I guess it's a thing to do. It takes a PhD to figure that out. And they published it in a medical journal. So there's some credit there, validity, if you will. And he wouldn't tell me how he did it, of course. That was the big secret.
Right.
But the number one thing he would share with me, he said it was community. Were his findings in that research. And that always stuck with me.
Interesting too, because I feel like that is one of the things that makes AA so valuable. And certainly that made it so valuable for me in my beginning, is that I had friends that were doing the same thing. So I had that sense of acceptance in that sense of community. And I always say we were so busy having fun, like I almost forgot that I was doing this really big, heavy, serious thing in getting sober, because we were just having fun. But that acceptance and just being able to be 150% who I was and have people that loved me and to enjoy my life with was huge.
Absolutely huge. Absolutely huge. Another thing I like to share at the end of my drinking, the loneliness and being alone. I am an isolator. Was probably one of the most awful experiences. I mean, there's plenty of them, right? I have a colorful past, right? I think that most of us
no
do.
shortage of awful experiences in addiction.
Right. The classic, you can be in a room with 100 people, but you're still alone.
For sure.
But I heard this quote that said, loneliness and the feeling of being unwanted and uncared for are the greatest of poverties. Mother Teresa.
Yeah.
And that hit me hard. Really hard. And I think most of us can relate to that. And at that point, I really these pieces started coming together where I realized how much I need that community and to feel connected. And once I had that piece, okay, now how do I do that? And what is my role in that? What are my boundaries? What's healthy? What are healthy connections? What's a healthy community?
Yeah.
That's new for me.
Right.
What I thought was healthy before was not really serving me or others.
So, okay, when did you know that you had a problem? Like, how did it start to make sense to you where you were like, oh crap, I need to do something about this?
Oh, probably 20 years ago. Before I was...
Well, you have to tell, because nobody can see you. You have to tell them what that means.
Yeah.
Were you 13?
I'm 21, by the way, so...
I started early.
Right. Preconception. Damn you, Dad. No. Probably in my late teens.
Okay, so young.
Yeah. I didn't start using or drinking at the youngest of ages. Like I know a lot of people started 11, 12. But I did have addictive behaviors. I loved skateboarding. I loved motorcycles, snowboarding, skiing.
A little adrenaline there.
Yeah. I was seeking that rush.
Yeah.
And that's all I wanted to do. Of course, no one really said, "Oh, that's bad behavior," right? Oh, the skateboarding thing. That's a whole nother topic for another time. But you know, it was a gradual process for me experimenting with marijuana. I wasn't really into drinking that much, but when I did, it was like the switch was flipped, and which is really interesting because I have a nickname and an alias, and it's Switch, short for Switch Stance Lance, which comes from skateboarding, snowboarding. So anyway, a little irony or coincidence there, but you know, at very young ages, people would make comments like, "Man, how are you always the drunkest guy in the room? You drank 2 beers, I drank 2 beers." And yeah, so there was something going on at a very young age. And but the company I kept, that was normal.
Yeah, for sure.
That was normal.
So how old were you when you actually got sober?
This time around, I was 2 weeks before my 39th birthday, so we'll just say 39.
Yeah. Did you have some sort of event that got you there? Did you have crisis? Like for me, my final thing was, and I say final because there were a lot of final things that didn't end up being final. But my actual final was a car accident. Like, did you have something like that? And that's different for everybody, right? Like, for some people have a much higher sort of rock bottom, and maybe they get in a huge fight with their spouse and they're like, wow, that's enough. Like, I have to stop this. But for me, I like to ride that train all the way to the depths of despair. And I mean, jail didn't stop me. Like, nothing stopped me until my accident. So where did you land in that rock bottom spectrum?
Well, you know, I'd had a little experience a few years previous, but I'd kind of been through the gamut of jail, DUIs, so I figured the smart thing to do was just stay home and drink and walk and do things like that.
I always said that I needed a driver. I used to always say that. Like, that was the problem. I needed a driver.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I actually moved to San Francisco because of the public transportation.
Yes.
I could drink
See,
freely
you're problem solving.
Yes. Solutions, right? Right? No, but, you know, I found myself in Eugene, Oregon. I'd gone back to school at University of Oregon. I was accepted into a prestigious program there, the School of Architecture and Allied Arts for product design, straight A's, and that was co-signing my BS. I thought I was managing my alcoholism. Like, what kind of alcoholic
can
is achieving this?
Yeah.
And I didn't love myself enough to care about anything else. It was the fact that I didn't feel loved. That piece was missing. I didn't feel lovable. So essentially, I you know, by all means, on the surface, I had everything going. I had a nice apartment, nice vehicle. I locked myself up in the apartment for about 6 weeks and drank. I wasn't using at the time. I'd kind of put that behind me. It was just alcohol.
So when you quit using drugs, did you feel like you were taking steps in the right direction?
Yeah. Yeah. It was easier. Like, okay, it's just alcohol now.
Right.
And everything that comes along with that, it's socially
Which in many
acceptable.
ways, alcohol is much more dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in the lies that you can tell yourself. Like, I feel like, people when they're shooting up heroin, like it's pretty clear there's an issue.
Sure.
But with alcohol, it's really insidious. Like you can rationalize and justify and think that you're managing it. Like you can lie to yourself all day long, especially because it's so socially acceptable. Like people don't come down on you so much. Like you're not going to be at Thanksgiving dinner with your family with a needle in your arm, right?
Right.
But you can be at Thanksgiving dinner
and have wine.
And have a million beers for sure, and probably your family's probably doing it too. So,
sure.
In a lot of ways, I think alcohol is really the greatest offender.
I would agree with you there. Yeah, having run the gamut, just in my experience. Yeah. So, long story short, or longer, I found myself in the hospital at the university there again with a 0.42 blood alcohol level.
That's a lot in case any of you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the DUI is 0.08. So a 0.42.
It's almost half your blood.
That's crazy. Yeah.
That's near death.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, a non-alcoholic person would be at the very least in a coma at that point.
Yeah. And at the time, if you'd asked me, I'm like, oh, I'm fine.
Right. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
That speaks to the tolerance. Like it's crazy. One time I got pulled over and I had to do the field sobriety tests, right? I passed my field sobriety test and then blew a 0.24. Like it's insane. Like I think about it now, I'm like, holy crap, 3 times the legal limit. And I sailed right through those sobriety tests, And the cop was like so angry because he knew I was drunk. Like he could smell alcohol and he was so mad that I kept passing the field sobriety test, which is why he ended up breathalyzing me. He's like, I know you're drunk. I was like, whatever, dude. But it's crazy when you think about that level of alcohol in your system. Especially now after not having a drink for so many years. It's like, oh my God, I can't even imagine how many drinks that took.
Yeah. I mean, like I'd mentioned, it was at least 6 weeks solid of, really, of course, not really eating, very little self-care.
Yeah.
I'll spare you guys the details of that. You can imagine. Not a pretty sight.
Yeah. Hygiene doesn't rank highly when you've been drinking morning, noon, and night for 6 weeks. Yeah.
And, I kind of love this part of it. I didn't really want to keep going on living, but I didn't have I don't know if the guts is the best word, but I didn't have it within me to take my own life.
Right.
So I tried to meditate myself to death.
Really? You were going to will death?
I was. I had experience in meditation, and I knew that you could slow your heart rate down and the bodily functions. And so I would literally like drink until I was blacking out or passing out, and I would pray and go into a meditative state to try to stop my breath. But I always woke up, and like, dang, kept waking up. And, that was divine intervention. Yeah.
I have a really similar thing too. And you and I were talking about this a little bit before we started recording. I wanted to die so badly every day. And I wouldn't take my own life. I really thought at some point I would just go to sleep and never wake up again. That's what I thought.
Right.
And because I couldn't figure out, I'm 5'2". When I quit drinking, I was 97 pounds. Like I was a tiny little person. And I kept thinking, like, how can my body even handle this on a daily basis? Like how much I was drinking. Like there's no, like my body is going to give out at some point and I'm just not going to wake up. And every day that I woke up, it was almost more despair, because I knew I had to do it again, and I was like, oh my God, I have to do this another day. And it just felt unbearable.
Absolutely unbearable.
So gross.
It's so not gross. Really living.
And I lived like that for years. That's another thing. It just blows my mind. Like how, like, But it's also funny to me too that like we can survive all of that on a daily basis. We can survive feeling like that and all of this self-hatred and self-loathing that I had. And I despised myself. I was so gross and I lied to everybody and you would never know that on the outside, right? Because I wore the right clothes and drove the right car and always had my hair and makeup done and lived in the right zip code. You know, like I made the outside picture look fantastic so you would have no idea what a mess I was on the inside. But we live like that for so long at that level of pain and despair and self-hatred. And then we get sober and we want to get lazy. You know what I mean? Right. You get sober and we're like, oh my God, I'm sad today. I can't take it. It's like, really? You were sad for a decade, dumbass. Go to a meeting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I need some kind of break from the 10, 15, 20 years of abusing myself.
So funny.
Oh, gosh, now I really can't do anything.
Yeah, like we think, seriously, we act like these feelings we have in sobriety, like it feels like it's the end of the world.
Oh, man.
And when I think what I lived through drunk, it's like, damn, really, this is nothing. Like, obviously, I can take it because I took it all those years when I was drunk. Like, obviously, I can do it. I just got to figure out how. But yeah, it just cracks me up. We turn into such babies with our feelings, you know?
We do, you know, and I'm really glad that you brought that up. That seems, for me, myself, in sobriety is a big challenge. In fact, this morning, for me, I woke up with, I call it the mind grind.
Mm-hmm. I call it the committee.
Yes.
There's a whole committee in there.
Yeah, maybe it's the committee running the mind grind.
Yeah, it's relentless.
It is. It is very relentless. You know, this morning, first thing was like, maybe I'm getting sick. I can't make it to my engagements that I have this morning. And it was a real sense of fear, some anxiety. You know, the first really over a year of sobriety, I had no anxiety really. I mean, once I got through the detox and all of that, but life started happening. My life got bigger, and it's a very scary feeling because it takes me back to those times of using and drinking, the impending doom and uncertainty. Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's going to become of me?
And I know, like, I do get that the differences in sobriety, I don't have anything to numb those feelings, right?
Yeah.
Like, we could deal with it drunk because you would drink and then you didn't feel anything.
Right.
So obviously it is about developing coping skills and things like that. It just is funny to me that I want to be so lazy about it.
Right.
Or to like think that I can't do it. That's something I had to really break down in my head too. Is like, well, why do I think I can't? Like, why do I get caught up? Why does the committee constantly tell me like, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. You can't do this. Like, what is that about? Because I knew logically, right? I'm super logical. I knew logically. I'm like, obviously I can. Like, I'm physically capable. Like, there's nothing really stopping me, you know? So it's like, okay, I just have to figure it out. And that's how I looked at it. I just refused to get caught up in that. Like, I couldn't do it or this is overwhelming. I think I'm more kind of like a bulldog where I'm like, I'm going to kick its ass. Like, whatever it is, I'm going to figure it out and kick its ass.
Yeah.
I'll just figure it out.
Absolutely.
But I wasn't going to let it take me down. It was so absurd.
Right. Right. And, you know, there's definitely been days where I have that fight. Most of the time it is that way. On the days that I don't, like you said, just get up and go to the meeting, you dumbass.
Yeah.
It's all.
That's a conversation I have with myself regularly.
Yeah. It's all in the action. What I found, I you know, I've been accused of being like that great statue, the thinker.
Yeah.
A lot of people have said that throughout my life. You're like the guy pondering everything.
Right.
And I love to think it done. I'll sit there and think. I'll take one little thought and turn it into the greatest story ever. Before you know it, the sun isn't even up yet, and before you know it, I'm already homeless. I'm in jail. I mean, the worst thing.
Creating all of this drama, yeah.
Yeah, and that I feel like is a big part of the insanity of the disease.
For sure.
If you will.
Yeah.
And I would say that highly contributes to relapse as well.
Yeah, yeah. And there are days that I definitely lose the battle. You know what I mean? There are days that, like, I don't think I've ever had serious, like, clinical depression, but I certainly have bad days.
Yeah.
And I've certainly had, I even talk about toward the end of 2018, I had some months that were pretty rough, and I had a lot of sort of unknown, not knowing what was going to happen, and a lot of financial insecurity and business, and just overwhelmed. And I had several months that I was pretty freaking sad, but so it's not that it's always perfect or that you always get through it. I definitely have days I lose the battle, but I'm not going to lose the war.
Right.
And even in those days, like, I still 98% of the time had to get out and live life, right? Like, I have businesses to care for, and I have people to show up for, and I have people that count on me to show up regardless of how sad I am. And I will always do those things. I might not show up for myself, but I will always show up for someone else. And so I still kind of would go through the motions, which I'm so grateful for, because you can't get paralyzed in it. If I got paralyzed in that sadness and overwhelm and unknown, I don't know if I would be able to drag myself out of it. Like, that's scary.
It's a very scary place.
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to the community, right? That sense of feeling connected. People they'll reach out when you have that level of accountability, like, hey, where are you?
Yeah.
And all you got to do is pick up the phone. And
creating that insulation for yourself, right? Like, that's what I think about with AA and my sober friends. Like, that's insulation.
Yeah.
And even in my sober houses, right? Because really it was the guys living in my sober houses when I was in those months of just sad and freaking out. It really was those guys that I was showing up for. I'm like, these are the guys, they're coming, they're living in my sober living. They are trusting me, and their parents are trusting me to care for them and to lead them in sobriety, right? That's what we're doing. And so for me, it's like, I don't even have the right to get paralyzed in that sadness, right? Because it's just not about me at this stage. Like, I will always show up for them and to try to help and be my best, and be an example.
Right. And I think, Bob and Bill, the founders of AA, were really spot on when they came up with the primary purpose, which is to stay sober and help
other alcoholics
achieve sobriety. Right. And I find the most solace when I'm helping someone else. And it may not be in the traditional sense with sponsees or like helping somebody move in the meeting, right? I have done that more than once.
Manual labor is not my strong suit.
Right. And it's the sayings I used to think were so awful and cheesy, but practicing these principles in all of our affairs. Mm-hmm. Right. And one of those principles is being of service. And as cliche as it sounds, I've literally helped an old lady cross the street.
For sure. Listen, I live for that, though. I live for that. Like,
absolutely.
My personal code of conduct is love, service, and gratitude. Like, that is what I base my life on.
Yeah.
And I love those little cheesy things, like helping somebody carry something, holding the door open for somebody, like complimenting somebody's shirt at the grocery store, like whatever it is, dude, that's awesome, because not enough people are doing that.
Right.
Because everybody is so busy being self-consumed and worried about themselves that we don't even notice each other. And then everybody's mad at each other too. Like, I see all these kind of hateful things, memes and t-shirts with messages about how much people hate other people. And I'm like, God, that sucks. Like, is that really what people are out in the world thinking, is what a pain in the ass other people are? Like, that's weird to me.
It is weird to me as well.
So like my whole thing is I want people to feel good. I want you to feel good in your life. And if you walk in and you're wearing an awesome shirt, I'm going to go, dude, I love your shirt. That's cool.
Yeah.
More people need to be doing that instead of being mad at each other, you know?
I could not agree
love
more.
that cheesy stuff. Like,
Yeah.
that's the stuff that will change your life.
It will. And it will. It's operating on a higher vibration.
For sure.
You know, and there's science backing that up if that's
I was just going to
what
say,
you
we just
need.
lost half the listening audience.
Right, yeah.
He's getting the vibration. People
Yeah.
are like, what?
Well, I'll rope you back in. I have my lasso out here. My spiritual lasso. There goes the other half.
There goes the other half. We're out.
Oh, time to find a new career. Or the, you know, if the spiritual aspect is your thing too, there's the vibration thing. For lack of better terms. That is a scientific term, by the way.
It is, yeah.
The spiritual thing. You know, I've dedicated a good portion of my life understanding that what really keeps us connected. I did study some hard sciences. I was pre-engineering at one point. So, you know, physics, calculus, chem. So I look at it with two different pairs of glasses. But raising that vibration is key because my vibration, I can only speak from my own experience. I mean, sure, I see it in others, but I do my best not to judge or label
right.
what anyone else is going through. But, you know, I see and feel my vibration get low from negative things, or I don't even like saying that word. I'll just say unwanted speech, you know, the air I'm breathing, the food I'm putting in myself, the water I'm drinking, and even our lovely devices.
For sure.
You know, I love my phone. It's a great way to connect. There's so many positives about it, but at the same time, it is.
It's also a great way for me to escape life.
Yes.
That's where I have to be mindful.
Right.
Yeah. I'd love to, it's all these little things really that create the big picture of your life. And I have some of my listeners hear me talk about it all the time. I created a system called the Recovery Recipe. And my recovery recipe literally is like all this stuff that you're mentioning. It's how do you feed yourself in all your different pieces and parts? Like how are you feeding all those parts of your life and of your being on a daily basis to keep them healthy and happy? So the committee isn't taking over and being super negative and breaking you down, because we do have a natural penchant to go to the negative. And part of that is just how our brains, as people with addiction, how our brains are wired.
Yeah.
It does tend to create more negativity. So I have to really fight against that. But you have all these different life domains, you know, professional life, your spiritual life, your family life, your sober life. And I have to be feeding all those different pieces good, positive information. If I want my sobriety to be stronger, I have to feed it. If I want my business to be bigger and stronger, then I have to feed it properly to grow it properly. You know what I mean? And it is like, it's all those little tiny actions and things you do on a daily basis that really create your big picture in your whole life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it can be really summed up in the, are you familiar with the story of the two wolves? Native American, I believe it's a Native American story. It's really simple.
Whichever one you feed, yes.
Yes. Like
that's
the dark or the light one, right? Yeah. Which one are you going to feed today?
I heard this in a Matthew McConaughey. So part of my personal recovery recipe for myself is I listen to a lot of motivational things.
Me too.
And I found Matthew McConaughey, and he said, we've all got two wolves inside of us, and they both want to eat.
Yes.
It's figuring out which one are you going to feed. They both have to eat. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's such a good way to look at it, you know? And same thing. So you could relate that to an AA cliche too, is that you're either everything you do, you're either taking one step closer to sobriety or one step closer to another drink.
Yeah.
Which way are you going to go? You know, and it really is like you can simplify that to the most basic decisions that you make. You know, if my drinking friends call me to meet them to watch a ball game, or my sober friend calls me to go have coffee because she's struggling with something, which one am I going to do? going and meeting my drinking friends, right? Where maybe it doesn't sacrifice my sobriety, like it's not putting me at risk necessarily. It's still taking a step closer to a drink. We're going and having coffee with my sober friend and hearing her out with whatever she's dealing with is getting me a step closer to my sobriety. Yeah. And I have to look at my whole life that way, and I have to make deposits because life will naturally make withdrawals.
It will. It will.
So I have to make the deposits to keep it where there's enough for life to take, and keep replenishing.
Yeah. I love looking at it like that, the deposits in the life account.
Yeah.
And the more that you put in there, the better your chances are of long-term success.
For sure.
Sure. And in the beginning, when my account was
depleted
in the red, let's say, yeah. In fact, they wouldn't even give me an account.
I really couldn't have an account for a long time. I couldn't open a bank account.
That a lot of us have had to.
The joys of drunk life.
Right. They won't even take my money. I have to pay them to take my money. No, but I had to keep it simple. And I love to complicate the hell out of things.
Even the smallest things,
absolutely.
For sure.
And even, being several years sober, I find returning to those simple things is where it's at.
That's so where it's at.
It's what
and we
keeps
do
me
try to
going.
overcomplicate it. I think that's one of the challenges too. Obviously I'm a life coach and I work with a lot of people in their recovery and which is some of my favorite work. But really, I'm a transformation coach, right? Because my process can change whatever you need to change.
Yeah.
And like I say, everybody's recovering from something. So maybe what you're recovering from isn't addiction. Maybe it's a divorce or maybe it's who knows.
Sure.
But the process is to create transformation. And I feel like so many people will reach out to me and want to work with me and they think I have this magic formula,
Right.
like
well, that's
they
what we
think
want.
I have like this magic pill and you're going to talk to me one time and everything's going to change. Oof. Yeah. Like it's behind the curtain, and I'm like, no, dude, it's just this series of really simple stuff that you do every day. And I feel like people are disappointed, they're like, oh, that's it. That's what you want me to do. And I'm like, but this is what works. Like, yeah, that's what I want you to do because this is what works. Yeah. And it's almost too simple. It
is. And it doesn't, it almost logically doesn't make sense or intuitively. It's like, you want me to do this and my problems will go away?
So true.
That doesn't add up. That's when you need to add in the post-production here, the sprinkly star noise.
The magic dust.
The magic dust. That's what, the magic dust noise.
Okay, so last question, favorite question.
Okay.
What is your favorite thing about being a sober person?
I get to be here and be present for others. In helping others, we do get so much internally that there is a level of self-seeking there, but I would say it's a healthy one.
Yeah,
I guess.
Well, I mean that is kind of the essence of accountability, right?
Yeah.
I will almost always let myself down, but if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm probably going to show up and do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's why we hire coaches. It's why we hire personal trainers and nutritionists, so it is that is the essence of it. I will always show up for somebody else when I say I'm going to.
Yeah.
But I definitely can not show up for myself.
Yeah, right. Well, here it is from the 9-step promises. Freedom from the bondage of self.
Yes.
That line always really resonated with me.
Yeah.
That bondage of self is pretty gnarly.
Yeah. Yes, it is. That's the truth. Well, Lance, thank you so much for doing this with me. It has been a pleasure meeting you.
Having me.
You guys don't know this, but we literally sat and talked for like an hour before we started recording. And I was like, we sat down to hit record. And I was like, well, we kind of already did a podcast. I guess we'll just do another one.
Yeah. And we didn't even talk about the breath work, which is how I help others. So maybe we'll have episode 2.5 in the future or something.
We'll have another one. Maybe I'll get you on a Facebook Live with me and talk about breath work.
That'd be fantastic.
We're going to start doing that pretty soon too.
Yeah. And if you guys are interested in breath work, there's Facebook page, Evolve Breathwork, Instagram, Evolve Breathwork, web page.
Yeah. What is the website too?
www.evolvebreathwork.com.
Okay, perfect. And you guys out there, I'll put all of that in the show notes for you too, so it's easy to get to. And I hope you guys are having a great day, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
You've reached the end of another great episode of the Addiction Unlimited podcast. Candid and honest conversation about addiction and recovery. Be sure to visit us at addictionunlimited.com to join the conversation and access show notes and links to everything we talked about. Love this episode? Please take 30 seconds to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes to help us improve and give you the information you want. Thanks for listening. See you next week.